From Doakes tracking Dexter to the Everglades, to Debra witnessing Dexter plunge his knife into Travis Marshall. Throughout his life, Dexter Morgan attempted to hide his true nature as a serial killer from everyone. Yet despite his efforts to keep his dark passenger masked, 18 people discovered his deadly secret. In this video, we're gonna dive deep into how they discovered the truth, the aftermath, and more. This count excludes his victims who only learn the truth in their final moments while bound to his kill table. So let's kick things off with Harry Morgan. Harry Morgan was the first to find out about Dexter's dark urges to kill, making him the most important person in shaping Dexter's life as a careful killer who targeted bad people. As Dexter's adoptive father and a respected Miami police detective, Harry saw murderous urges in his son when he was young and made the decision to guide these urges rather than try to stop them. The relationship between Harry and Dexter began when Harry found 3-year-old Dexter sitting in his mother's blood after Hector Estrada killed her with a chainsaw in a shipping container, an event that changed Dexter forever and created what he later called his dark passenger. In his job as a detective, Harry saw many violent criminals go free because of legal problems or lack of evidence, which made him lose faith in the system he worked for. This frustration, combined with seeing Dexter kill neighborhood pets and showing disturbing behavior, led Harry to believe that Dexter's urges couldn't be stopped, but could be pointed towards people who deserved punishment.
I found the grave, son.
That dog was a noisy little creep, Dad.
There were a lot of bones in there, Dexter. Not just buddies.
The creation of the Code of Harry was a turning point for both, as Harry began secretly teaching teenage Dexter how to pick victims carefully, get rid of evidence, and kill without getting caught. Skills that would let him work as a vigilante while staying free, with the main rule being, don't get caught. And the second rule telling Dexter to only kill those who deserved it, mainly murderers who had escaped legal punishment. Dexter's first planned kill with Harry's help happened when he was 19 years old. Harry helped Dexter target a nurse named Mary, who was killing her patients with overdoses of morphine. This would be the start of Dexter's newfound life, one who got rid of other killers and arguably made the world safer. Right after Dexter became Harry's vigilante weapon, something unexpected happened to Harry himself, who couldn't handle the reality of what he created. After stumbling across Dexter's kill room with cut-up victim Juan Reynes.
Just stay away. Please, stay away.
Harry got physically sick, overwhelmed by the gruesome result of his teachings, and within 3 days, the weight of his moral choice led him to kill himself, something Dexter thought was from natural causes until years later. The long-term effects of Harry's knowledge and training of Dexter's killing urges echoed throughout Dexter's adult life and affected many others. Harry continued to appear to Dexter as a voice in his head, a mental image that would question, advise, and sometimes criticize Dexter's actions, serving as both the voice of the code and a constant reminder of the moral confusion in Dexter's life. Harry's choice to channel rather than cure Dexter's killing urges was a huge moral compromise that haunted Harry until his death and eventually led to terrible consequences for many people close to Dexter, including his sister Debra, who we'll cover later in this video. As Dexter grew and sometimes questioned parts of Harry's code, the ghost-like presence of Harry stayed with him, appearing in times of crisis or moral doubt to remind Dexter of the rules that had kept him free and functioning in society. These appearances worked as a storytelling device throughout Dexter's life, showing the unavoidable influence Harry maintained even years after his actual death. The discovery that Harry had killed himself after fully understanding what he had created in Dexter was one of the most devastating revelations in Dexter's life, forcing him to rethink not only his father's love, but the entire moral framework he had built his existence on as a vigilante killer. Perhaps the saddest part of Harry's knowledge was how it changed what could have been a normal father-son relationship into something darker and more practical. Harry became not just Dexter's father, but his handler, teacher, and the designer of his killing method, giving up normal fatherly love for a practical approach to managing what he saw as unavoidable, thus denying both himself and Dexter the chance for real emotional connection. Harry's position as Dexter's first confidant set up a pattern that would repeat throughout Dexter's life, as those who discovered his secret either became helpers, victims, or both. A pattern that began with Harry himself, who became both helper through his creation of the code and victim through his inability to live with the knowledge of what he had helped create. The relationship between Harry and Dexter raised deep questions about nature versus nurture, moral compromise in hard situations, and whether Harry's decision to channel rather than try to heal Dexter's killing urges was a failure of imagination or a practical solution to an impossible problem. Perhaps one of the most tragic consequences of Harry's selective intervention was his decision to adopt only Dexter and leave Brian behind in the container, unknowingly creating the future ice truck killer who would one day return to Miami as another serial killer who instinctively recognized the darkness they shared. Brian Moser, known as the Ice Truck Killer, was the first person besides Harry Morgan to spot Dexter's true nature as a serial killer, creating a deep bond between biological brothers who had been split up as children but shared the same bloody past and killing urges. Brian was Dexter's older biological brother, who witnessed the same brutal chainsaw murder of their mother, Laura Moser, in the shipping container, a trauma that have turned both boys into killers, but with very different methods. While Dexter was adopted by Harry Morgan and taught a strict code for his killing, Brian was left behind, spending his youth in mental hospitals where his killing urges grew wild, eventually becoming a prosthetic specialist who used his medical knowledge to drain his victims' blood. The tension built as Brian carefully planned a series of murders across Miami that were specifically designed to catch Dexter's attention and speak to him in a language only another killer would understand.
I've never seen such clean, dry, neat-looking dead flesh. Wonderful.
Brian left bloodless, cut-up bodies into perfect pieces that he displayed in public places, and even left a doll head at Dexter's apartment. All clues that showed he knew exactly who and what Dexter was, even while Dexter had no idea who was sending these messages or why they felt so personal to him. Brian took his plan further by dating Dexter's sister, Debra, under the fake name Rudy Cooper, getting close to the Morgan family to study Dexter up close. He watched Dexter's rigid routines, his fake emotions, and his carefully built normal person act, all while Dexter was helping investigate the very murders Brian was committing. The big moment came when Brian finally showed his true self to Dexter after kidnapping Debra and taking her to their childhood home. Brian had set up the perfect scene, their old house where everything began, Debra tied up on a table like one of Dexter's victims, and then the shocking truth as he stood before his brother and said the words that shattered Dexter's carefully built world.
You can't be a killer and a hero.
Revealing not just that he knew Dexter was a serial killer, but that they were brothers who had seen their mother die together. A connection so powerful that it made Dexter question everything Harry had taught him about controlling his dark urges. Most powerfully, he offered Dexter a choice: to embrace his true nature without the restrictions of Harry's code, to kill Debra together as a symbolic rejection of the family that had separated them, and to begin a new life as brothers, united by their shared darkness rather than divided by Harry's intervention. Dexter faced a serious identity crisis as he learned that not only was Brian his biological brother, but that Brian had specifically targeted Debra both as a way to get close to Dexter and as a rejection of the family that had taken Dexter in while leaving Brian behind. In this moment, Dexter had chose between his blood brother, who accepted his true killer nature, and his adopted sister, who knew nothing of his dark passenger but had always been there for him. When Dexter finally chose to kill Brian to save Debra, it was one of the few times that Dexter broke Harry's code, by killing someone who was indeed a killer, who had escaped justice, but who was also family that truly understood and accepted him. This choice showed the humanity that Harry had managed to build in Dexter, proving that despite his killing urges, Dexter valued his connections to his adoptive family more than the pull of his biological brother who shared his dark nature. Brian's recognition of what Dexter truly was marked an important point in Dexter's growth, as it was the first time he met someone who both knew what he was and fully accepted it, giving Dexter a glimpse of a life where he could be his real self without always having to pretend. This brief taste of acceptance made Dexter's later relationships more complicated as he began to want a real connection rather than just a cover story. In the years after Brian's death, the memory of his brother's complete acceptance haunted Dexter, creating a lingering what if that sometimes came up in moments of doubt. Dexter occasionally wondered what life might have been like if he had chosen Brian over Debra, if he had fully embraced his killer nature without Harry's limiting code, and if he would have allowed himself to kill freely without moral rules. Sergeant James Doakes was the only cop who instinctively recognized the darkness lurking beneath Dexter Morgan's carefully constructed facade. Before joining Miami Metro, Doakes had served as a Black Ops soldier in the United States Army Special Forces, where he developed finely tuned instincts that allowed him to sense the darkness in others, along with the ruthless precision and determination that would later define his pursuit of Dexter Morgan. These military experiences, which involved sanctioned killing, gave Doakes a unique perspective on violence that made him particularly sensitive to predators hiding in plain sight. From their first encounter, Doakes harbored a deep, visceral suspicion of Dexter that stood in stark contrast to how his other colleagues viewed the seemingly harmless blood spatter analyst. While everyone else at Miami Metro saw Dexter as an odd but valuable team member who brought donuts and avoided confrontation, Doakes alone detected something profoundly wrong beneath that awkward smile and practiced social manners that Dexter displayed.
What do you care about that woman?
I don't. I was just...
You like when women cry? You like that? What's your thing, psycho?
The tension between them grew steadily over time, with Doakes frequently confronting Dexter in the office hallways, elevator, and calling him names like creep, weirdo, and psycho, watching him with narrowed eyes during department meetings, and making it clear that he wasn't fooled by the act that seemed to convince everyone else. Doakes' suspicions intensified after a confrontation at the shipment yards.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Taken aback by Dexter's unexpected fighting skills, Doakes realized that there was much more to the lab geek than even he suspected. This incident led Doakes to begin investigating Dexter's past more thoroughly. Doakes had already sensed a darkness in Dexter, but this fight showed that Dexter possessed fighting skills capable of taking down an ex-Special Forces Marine, abilities you least suspect from someone like Dexter. This revelation, along with others, drove Doakes to obsessively shadow Dexter, determined to expose his dark secret. The buildup of tension reached new heights when Doakes began following Dexter after work, tailing him to strange locations in the middle of the night, observing peculiar behavior that didn't match the persona Dexter presented at work, and documenting these activities while trying to connect them to unsolved cases or missing persons. Dexter became increasingly aware of Doakes' surveillance, forcing him to postpone his killing rituals and create a dangerous game of cat and mouse between the two men. This culminated in several confrontations where Doakes directly accused Dexter of hiding something significant, stating with absolute certainty that he knew something was off about him, and that he didn't buy his Boy Scout act, and that he was determined to expose whatever Dexter was hiding. The desperate search for truth ended up leading him to break into Dexter's apartment, search through his personal belongings, and eventually find a collection of blood slides hidden in an air conditioning unit. Upon finding this evidence, Doakes' suspicions were finally confirmed, transforming his gut feeling into solid proof that Dexter was indeed a serial killer. Armed with this knowledge and the blood slide evidence, Doakes confronted Dexter at a remote cabin in the Everglades.
That's right, motherfucker. It's over.
How'd you find me?
GPS tap on your boat. Jesus Christ, Morgan. Jesus fucking Christ, you're the Bay Harbor Butcher.
This resulted in a violent struggle between the two. Doakes grazed Dexter's thigh with a shot, leaving him bleeding, but Dexter's determination overcame Doakes' lethal skill. After a chaotic struggle, Dexter subdued him with a chokehold. This culminated with Doakes being locked in a cage while Dexter contemplated how to handle this threat to his carefully constructed life. This saw Dexter trapped in an impossible situation, unwilling to kill Doakes because he was an innocent man by the standards of Harry's code, yet unable to let him go knowing that Doakes would expose him.
I'm thinking about turning myself in.
That's a good call, Morgan.
Unfortunately for Doakes, before Dexter made his decision, Lila decided to solve his problem by setting the cabin ablaze with Doakes trapped inside. The explosion and fire killed Doakes and destroyed much of the physical evidence linking Dexter to his crimes, while conveniently framing Doakes himself as the Bay Harbor Butcher. What happened to Doakes showed an important truth about Dexter's life. No matter how careful Dexter was with his faked normal person act, something about who he really was could still be spotted by certain people. Lila's discovery of Dexter's deadly secret through Doakes didn't drive her away, it only strengthened her twisted connection to him. Lila West was the fourth person to discover Dexter Morgan's true nature as the Bay Harbor Butcher, a revelation that catalyzed one of the most dangerous and volatile relationships in Dexter's carefully constructed double life. As Dexter's Narcotics Anonymous sponsor and eventual lover, Lila positioned herself as someone who could see beyond the mask that people wore, claiming an almost supernatural ability to recognize the darkness that others concealed, an ironic parallel to Sergeant Doakes' instinctual recognition of Dexter's true nature. Lila entered Dexter's life during a period of vulnerability, when his relationship with Rita was strained and Doakes' suspicions had reached a boiling point, creating the perfect storm for Dexter to seek connection with someone who promised to accept him without judgment. Their relationship began under the guise of addiction recovery, with Dexter attending NA meetings at Rita's insistence following a fabricated heroin addiction to explain away his erratic behavior. During these sessions, Lila demonstrated an uncanny ability to see through Dexter's deceptions, challenging his rehearsed stories and pushing him to acknowledge his dark passenger, though she interpreted this as emotional trauma rather than homicidal compulsion. This apparent insight drew Dexter to her, creating an intimacy based on the possibility that someone might finally understand him without requiring the performance of normalcy that he maintained for everyone else. As their relationship intensified, Lila's obsessive tendencies emerged alongside her manipulative tactics. She deliberately sabotaged Dexter's relationship with Rita, orchestrated situations to make herself appear victimized, and progressively isolated Dexter from his support network, behaviors that hinted at the dangerous extremes to which she would later go on to maintain their connection. A turning point in their relationship came during a trip to Naples, Florida, where Dexter experienced a rare moment of genuine emotional breakthrough after almost killing Santos Jimenez, the man who murdered his mother in the shipping container. After Dexter had tracked Santos to his bar called The Swamp, he waited until everyone had left to attempt to tell Santos how he felt. Jimenez threatened Dexter with a baseball bat, but Dexter quickly overpowered him, revealing his true identity as one of the boys left in the pool of his mother's blood. Shocked, Jimenez confessed that Dexter's mother was killed because she wasn't just a police informant, but also Harry Morgan's lover. This revelation staggered Dexter, who nearly killed Jimenez until Lila's well-timed call interrupted him. When she heard the edge in his voice, she believed that he was about to relapse and urged him not to use, inadvertently saving Jimenez's life. Dexter abandoned Jimenez at the bar and returned to their motel, emotionally drained and collapsing into Lila's comforting embrace. The next morning, Lila revealed her own darkness, confessing she had once burned down a house with her ex-boyfriend inside. This acceptance temporarily convinced him that Lila could be his true partner, someone who could see him completely and not turn away. This became more and more short-lived, however, as her obsession with Dexter escalated to increasingly destructive behavior, including stalking, breaking and entering, and eventually, arson. The situation reached its breaking point when Doakes confronted him at a remote cabin in the Everglades, resulting in Doakes' imprisonment as Dexter contemplated how to resolve this threat to his freedom without violating Harry's code by killing an innocent man. The final revelation of how far Lila would go to protect her bond with Dexter came when she followed Dexter's GPS to the cabin and discovered that he had captured Sergeant Doakes. Upon finding Doakes imprisoned in the cabin in the Everglades and learning the full extent of Dexter's killing history, Lila made the shocking decision not to free Doakes or alert the authorities, but instead to solve Dexter's problem by setting the cabin ablaze with Doakes trapped inside, believing that this act of murder would bind her and Dexter together permanently through their shared darkness, while simultaneously framing Doakes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. This act, committed without Dexter's knowledge or consent, demonstrated the dangerous extremes of Lila's devotion and her fundamental misunderstanding of Dexter's code. While she believed she was proving her love by eliminating a threat to their relationship, Dexter saw only the murder of an innocent man and the violation of the principles that gave his killing purpose and meaning. The aftermath of Doakes' murder marked the beginning of the end for Lila and Dexter, as her increasingly erratic behavior culminated in the attempt to kill both Aster and Cody by setting her loft on fire with them inside, forcing Dexter to acknowledge the danger she posed, not just to his secret life, but to innocent people he cared about.
Where is Lila?
I'm over here. Could have had it all, Dexter.
In a final confrontation in Paris, where Lila had fled after her failed murder attempt, Dexter fulfilled his promise to give her the same end he had given so many others, injecting her with the M99 and wrapping her body in plastic. Lila's discovery of Dexter's deadly secret represented a pivotal moment in his evolution. Unlike Doakes, whose knowledge threatened exposure and punishment, Lila offered Dexter the possibility of acceptance without the exhausting pretense of normalcy, a temptation that nearly led him to abandon the careful discipline of Harry's code in favor of a more impulsive, emotionally driven approach to his dark passenger. Her violent end served as a stark reminder of the danger inherent in sharing his true self with others, reinforcing Dexter's belief that genuine connection was impossible for someone like him and that isolation was the necessary price of his survival. Miguel Prado discovered Dexter Morgan's secret life as a vigilante serial killer during the events of Season 3, forever changing both men's destinies and leading to a deadly game of manipulation and betrayal. Miguel Prado was a prominent figure in Miami's justice system and Cuban community, serving as an assistant district attorney known for his aggressive prosecution and dedication to putting criminals behind bars. He was part of a respected family that included his brothers Ramon and Oscar. Miguel initially crossed paths with Dexter Morgan after Dexter accidentally killed Miguel's younger brother, Oscar, while pursuing a murderer named Freebo. This tragic mistake became the foundation of their complicated relationship, as Miguel was initially unaware that Dexter was responsible for his brother's death and instead believed Freebo had killed Oscar. The two men bonded over their shared desire to see Freebo brought to justice. though their motivations differed dramatically. Miguel sought conventional justice through the legal system, while Dexter intended to satisfy his need to kill according to his personal code. After Dexter tracked down and killed Freebo, Miguel unexpectedly arrived at the scene. Instead of arresting Dexter, Miguel surprisingly thanked him, believing that Dexter had avenged his brother's death.
I'm gonna tell you something. I wasn't sure that I could do this. But you did. You did. We're gonna get rid of the evidence.
This marked the beginning of Miguel's descent into vigilantism as he began to see the potential benefits of Dexter's brand of justice. Their relationship deepened when Miguel gave Dexter a shirt stained with what Dexter assumed was Freebo's blood, as a sign of trust and gratitude. Dexter, typically a lone wolf who followed his adoptive father's hairy strict code about killing only those who deserve death and evading capture, found himself in unfamiliar territory as Miguel started to idolize him. Miguel began to hint at his frustration with the justice system, particularly regarding a man named Ethan Turner who had killed his wives but couldn't be prosecuted due to lack of evidence. The district attorney's behavior became increasingly erratic and bold, pushing Dexter to include him in his dark activities. The pivotal moment came when Miguel not only discovered what Dexter was planning to do with Ethan Turner, but insisted on participating, breaking down Dexter's carefully constructed walls of secrecy and forcing him to make a critical decision about whether to let someone else into his closely guarded world. The revelation of Dexter's true nature to Miguel was both deliberate and calculated on Dexter's part, though he never anticipated how far Miguel would take this knowledge. After Dexter killed Ethan on a ship, Miguel concludes that Dexter had lied about his whereabouts when it took place and came to the conclusion that Dexter was in fact a vigilante killer. Rather than being horrified, Miguel was exhilarated by the experience, seeing it as true justice being served. What followed was a dark apprenticeship as Dexter attempted to teach Miguel his code, only kill murderers who had escaped traditional justice, and to do so without getting caught. However, Miguel quickly demonstrated that he lacked Dexter's restraint and methodical approach. The partnership reached its breaking point when Miguel went rogue and killed defense attorney Ellen Wolf, a woman he considered an obstacle to justice because she had helped guilty criminals go free. This murder violated Dexter's code, since Ellen was innocent by his standards, simply doing her job within the legal system. When Dexter discovered what Miguel had done, he realized Miguel was killing for power and vengeance, rather than justice. The final betrayal came when Dexter discovered that the shirt that Miguel had given him with Freebo's blood on it was actually cow blood, meaning that Miguel had been playing Dexter from the beginning, using their friendship to learn his killing techniques, while plotting his own agenda of vigilante justice without moral constraints. The discovery of Miguel's deception and his unwillingness to follow the code led to an immediate and violent confrontation between the two men. Dexter realized that Miguel had become exactly the kind of threat his code was designed to protect him from, a killer without a code who knew his secret. Miguel, feeling betrayed by Dexter's reluctance to embrace his vision of unlimited vigilante justice, threatened to expose Dexter's secret life.
I am the last person you want to fuck with, because I will fuck you back in ways you never even imagined.
The situation escalated when Miguel had allied himself with the Skinner, a brutal serial killer who was terrorizing Miami and planned to have Dexter killed. Understanding that Miguel could not be controlled or reasoned with, Dexter made the difficult decision to kill his former friend. When Miguel attempted to break in LaGuerta's house to kill her, Dexter ambushed Miguel and subdued him with M99. Dexter then took Miguel to Ellen Wolf's house to kill him.
I accept you. I accept you, Dexter, like a brother.
I killed my brother. I killed yours too.
Dexter experienced a complex mix of emotion afterward. Relief at eliminating a threat to his secret life, regret over killing someone he had genuinely connected with, and a renewed commitment to maintaining his solitary existence. For perhaps the first time, Dexter fully understood the wisdom behind his father's insistence that he should never reveal his true nature to anyone. The outcome of Miguel's death and his discovery of Dexter's secret had lasting repercussions that shaped the remainder of Dexter's journey. First, Miguel's death had to be covered up carefully, with Dexter framing the Skinner for murder. This deception became even more complicated when Ramon Prado, grief-stricken and suspicious, began investigating his brother's death, nearly discovering Dexter's involvement before his alcoholism and erratic behavior rendered him unreliable. Professionally, the Miami Metro Police Department and the District Attorney's Office mourned the loss of a respected prosecutor, unaware of how far he had fallen from his sworn duties. On a personal level, Dexter learned painful lessons about trust and friendship. His experience with Miguel reinforced his belief that he could never truly share his dark passenger with others, leading him to be even more cautious about forming close relationships. I was pretty disappointed learning that Miguel was playing Dexter all this time. It was nice seeing Dexter have an actual friend, but I guess all good things come to an end, especially when you're a serial killer. Lumen Pierce, a victim of a brutal gang of torturers and murderers named the Barrel Girl Gang, discovered Dexter Morgan's secret life during Season 5, forming an unprecedented partnership that offered both healing and vengeance. Lumen Pierce entered Dexter Morgan's life during one of his darkest periods, shortly after the murder of his wife Rita by the Trinity Killer. Lumen came to Miami following a broken engagement, planning to get away from a mundane life, but instead fell victim to a group of men who kidnapped, raped, and tortured women before ultimately killing them and dumping their bodies in the ocean. Led by motivational speaker Jordan Chase, this group included Boyd Fowler, Dan Mendel, Cole Harmon, and Alex Tilden. When Dexter later tracked Boyd to his home as a potential victim for his own vigilante justice, he killed Boyd only to discover Lumen hiding in the house, having witnessed the murder. This unexpected encounter forced Dexter to make a critical choice about whether to kill the only witness to his crime or to break his code and help a victim who had seen his darkest secret.
She saw everything. She saw me.
The tension between Lumen and Dexter escalated through a series of challenging interactions after their initial meeting. Dexter initially held Lumen captive in a remote tourist center, unsure of what to do with her. Traumatized by her recent abuse, Lumen was terrified that Dexter was another predator who would harm her. Despite Dexter's attempts to explain that he only killed Boyd because Boyd was a killer, Lumen remained distrustful and even attempted escape, stabbing Dexter in the process. After multiple attempts to convince her of his intentions to help, Dexter eventually gained Lumen's trust by sharing a small piece of his truth, admitting that he had done this before, and showed her Boyd's collection of dead women's jewelry, proving Boyd was truly a killer. As Lumen began to recover physically, she revealed to Dexter that Boyd wasn't the only man who had hurt her. There were others that needed to face justice. This revelation created a moral dilemma for Dexter, who typically killed alone and followed his strict code. A crucial moment came when Lumen refused to leave Miami, despite Dexter's encouragement to return home to Minnesota. Instead, she became determined to hunt down her remaining abusers, leading her to stake out a suspect and even purchase a gun. When Dexter realized that she was serious about seeking revenge and would likely get herself killed or caught in the process, he faced a critical decision: abandon his solitary code and help her, or risk letting an innocent woman throw her life away in pursuit of justified vengeance. The full revelation of Dexter's nature to Lumen wasn't a single dramatic moment, but rather a gradual process of shared darkness. After deciding to help Lumen identify her attackers, Dexter began teaching her aspects of his methodology: how to track suspects, gather evidence, and eventually, how to kill. Their turning point came when they pursued Dan Mendel, one of Lumen's abusers. After Lumen shot Mendel in a warehouse, Dexter arrived to find a man still alive.
They're gonna find you. You cunt.
In this critical moment, Dexter demonstrated his killing in front of Lumen, showing her how he confirmed Mendel's guilt before snapping his neck. Rather than being horrified, Lumen expressed a sense of relief and justice. This shared kill created an unprecedented bond between them, as Lumen became the first person to not only know about Dexter's dark passenger, but to understand and accept it. As their partnership deepened, Dexter taught Lumen the complete details of his methodology, preparing kill rooms with plastic sheeting, collecting trophies, disposing of bodies in the ocean, and following careful procedures to avoid detection. Together, they systematically tracked and eliminated the remaining men responsible for Lumen's torture, with each kill bringing her closer to emotional healing. The relationship evolved beyond mere accomplices as they developed romantic feelings for each other, creating a connection Dexter had never experienced before: complete acceptance of his true self. The culmination of their partnership came with the takedown of Jordan Chase, the leader of the group, and an elaborate plan that required precise timing and trust. Throughout this process, Lumen witnessed Dexter's darkest nature, not with fear, but with understanding, as she experienced her own version of the same deadly urges born from trauma and a desire for justice. The successful elimination of Jordan Chase, the final name on Lumen's list, brought immediate and complex consequences for both Lumen and Dexter. In moments after Chase's death, as they stood in the kill room surrounded by plastic sheets and blood, Lumen experienced an unexpected sensation. The darkness inside her that had driven her need for vengeance suddenly lifted. Unlike Dexter's permanent dark passenger, Lumen's urge to kill had been temporary, born solely from her trauma and satisfied once all her abusers were dead. While Dexter had hoped that their shared darkness would allow them to build a life together, he recognized that Lumen was now free in a way that he never could be. Despite his emotional attachment to her, Dexter made the painful decision to let Lumen go, understanding that a life with him would only drag her back into darkness. For perhaps the first time, Dexter had allowed someone to see him completely and had been accepted, only to watch that person walk away because she could heal in ways that he could not. Lumen's departure and her knowledge of Dexter's secret had profound and lasting effects that shaped the remainder of Dexter's journey. Unlike his previous partnership with Miguel Prado, which ended in betrayal and death, Lumen left Dexter with the rare experience of having been fully known and accepted. Practically speaking, Dexter had to ensure that all evidence connecting him and Lumen to the murders was eliminated, requiring meticulous cleanup of kill rooms and disposal of bodies. The vigilante killings were eventually attributed to unknown assailants called the Vigilante Couple by the media, creating a lingering mystery in the Miami Metro Police Department. Dexter also learned valuable lessons about trust and vulnerability. While sharing his secret with Lumen hadn't led to betrayal, it reinforced the exceptional circumstances under which he could reveal himself to others. Perhaps most significantly, helping Lumen heal through vigilante justice showed Dexter that his dark passenger could serve a purpose beyond satisfying his own needs. It could bring closure to victims and eliminate predators who continued to cause harm. Jordan Chase, the charismatic self-help guru who secretly led a group of torturers and murderers, gradually pieced together that Dexter Morgan was the vigilante systematically eliminating his accomplices, turning their cat-and-mouse game into a deadly final confrontation. Behind Jordan's successful public image, he led a group of men who kidnapped, raped, tortured, and murdered women. The group's activities went undiscovered until one victim, Lumen Pierce, survived their torture at a camp called River Jordan. After escaping, Lumen partnered with Dexter to seek revenge. As Dexter and Lumen systematically eliminated Jordan's accomplices, Jordan began to notice the pattern of disappearances connected to his inner circle, setting the stage for his realization that someone was hunting his group. The first hint that led Jordan to suspect Dexter came after Boyd Fowler's disappearance. Though initially unconcerned due to Boyd's lower position in their group, Jordan became more alert when Dan Mendel was found dead. The turning point occurred when Cole Harmon, Jordan's head of security, disappeared immediately after a seminar that Dexter had attended. Jordan's suspicions grew as he recalled Dexter's seemingly innocent questions and his unusual interest in personal development. The connection solidified when Jordan learned that Dexter worked for Miami Metro Homicide and had expertise in blood analysis, skills that would be useful in covering up murders. The most telling clue came when Jordan noticed Dexter's protective behavior towards a blonde woman at one of his seminars, a woman Jordan later recognized as Lumen Pierce, the victim who had escaped. In a bold move to confirm his suspicions, Jordan approached Dexter under the pretense of offering him private sessions, using the opportunity to study his potential adversary and subtly threaten him by mentioning Dexter's son, Harrison. Jordan's final confirmation came when he set a trap using Alex Tilden as bait. Just as he suspected, Dexter and Lumen showed up, ready to kill Alex. Although Jordan never directly witnessed the kill happen, as he tried to have Deb and Quinn catch Dexter and Lumen in the act, this confirmed Jordan's suspicions. Armed with this evidence, Jordan prepared for their inevitable confrontation. Rather than going to the police, which would expose his own crimes, Jordan decided to eliminate the threat himself. He kidnapped Lumen to draw Dexter out, leaving evidence that he knew exactly who Dexter was and what he had done. When Dexter arrived at the abandoned camp to rescue Lumen, Jordan confronted him directly, finally laying all cards on the table.
Well, then what were you thinking? He could be a hero? You can't save one thing to make up for another, Dexter. It's just not the way the world works.
In that moment, the mask between predators dropped entirely, as Jordan acknowledged Dexter not as an ordinary man seeking justice, but as a killer with skills that matched or exceeded his own. Despite Jordan's preparations, Dexter managed to stab him in the foot and overpower him with a chokehold, demonstrating that even Jordan's awareness of his true nature wasn't enough to protect him from Dexter's experienced hand. When Jordan awoke, strapped to a table in a plastic-covered kill room, his theoretical understanding of Dexter as a killer became a terrifying reality. The methodical preparation of the kill room revealed to Jordan that Dexter was not just eliminating his group out of vengeance, but was an experienced serial killer with his own ritual and code. Jordan's famous control crumbled as he faced both Dexter and Lumen, now understanding the full extent of the trap he'd fallen into. In his final moments, Jordan attempted to use his psychological insights to manipulate Dexter, suggesting that they were alike in their darkness. This approach failed as Dexter acknowledged their similarities but rejected any deeper connection, allowing Lumen to deliver the killing blow as her final act of revenge. Jordan's death marked the complete elimination of the torture group, with the self-proclaimed leader being the last to fall. This kill also had someone else discovering Dexter's secret. Arriving on the scene of the murder, Deb nearly uncovered Dexter and Lumen's deadly secret, but she chose not to look behind the plastic sheets, unwittingly allowing her brother and his partner to escape.
In an hour, this place will be swarming with police. If I were you, I'd be gone by then.
For Dexter personally, the encounter with Jordan represented a significant moment in his evolution as a killer. Jordan was one of the few victims who fully recognized Dexter for what he was before death, creating a rare moment of acknowledgement between predators. This case demonstrated to Dexter that his careful facade could be penetrated by someone sufficiently observant and motivated, leading him to be even more cautious in future hunts. I thought Jordan was one of the most disgusting characters in the show, and it felt relieving watching Lumen kill him. Subscribe if you agree. Father Nicholas Galway, once a respected Catholic priest, now resided at St. Augustine Retirement Home, his mind deteriorated by dementia. Dexter visited him seeking information about a potential victim who had confessed to Galway years ago. Upon arrival, Dexter found Galway in worse condition than expected. The priest immediately mistook him for someone named Francis, speaking of events from decades past. After several failed attempts to redirect the conversation, Dexter realized Galway couldn't provide the information he sought. Yet something about the priest's oblivious presence sparked an unexpected impulse in Dexter. Sitting across from the confused priest, Dexter began to speak his truth. "Father, I've killed people, lots of people," he confessed quietly. When Dexter finished, Galway briefly focused, saying with surprisingly clarity, "My son, the taking of human life is a mortal sin." Seconds later, his eyes clouded again, forgetting about the conversation entirely. As Galway continued rambling, Dexter thanked him and left. As he left, he experienced a rare sense of release. He had spoken words he never dared to say to anyone who could remember them. Debra Morgan, after years of working alongside her adopted brother at Miami Metro Homicide, finally discovered Dexter's secret identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher in arguably one of Dexter's most important and biggest scenes in the show, forever altering their relationship and setting in motion events that would ultimately lead to her own tragic end. Debra Morgan and Dexter Morgan shared a complex history as adoptive siblings raised by Harry Morgan. After Dexter's mom got murdered, Harry took in 3-year-old Dexter, giving Debra a brother, though she often felt overshadowed by the attention Harry gave Dexter. What Debra didn't know was that Harry was secretly training Dexter to channel his homicidal urges towards killing criminals who escape justice. Throughout their adult lives, Debra and Dexter worked together at Miami Metro Police Department. Their professional and personal lives were deeply intertwined, with Debra frequently seeking Dexter's advice on cases and sharing her personal struggles with him. Despite their closeness, Dexter maintained his secret life as a serial killer, occasionally using his position within law enforcement to steer investigations away from himself or to gather information on potential victims. Debra's exceptional skills as a detective, combined with her complete trust in her brother, created a tense dynamic where she unknowingly came close to uncovering aspects of Dexter's dark passenger several times throughout the series, only to have her suspicions redirected by Dexter's careful manipulations. The tension leading to Debra's discovery of Dexter's secret built over several years through a series of near misses and growing complications in their relationship. In Season 6, Debra began therapy sessions with Dr. Michelle Ross following her traumatic experience of witnessing and participating in a fatal shooting. These therapy sessions led Debra to realize she had romantic feelings for Dexter, which, in my opinion, was a really weird storyline. Comment down if you agree. But consequently, this added emotional complexity to their already complicated relationship. Meanwhile, Dexter was pursuing the Doomsday Killer case. As the case progressed, both Debra and Dexter closed in on Travis Marshall from different angles, with Debra working the official investigation while Dexter planned to add Marshall to his table of victims. The critical moment came when Debra, wanting to confess her inappropriate feelings to Dexter, went looking for him after hours. Her search led her to the abandoned church where Dexter had set up his kill room for Travis Marshall. The discovery unfolded in a sequence of moments that permanently altered Debra's understanding of her brother and her own life. As she entered the church following a hunch about Dexter's whereabouts, Debra moved cautiously through the darkened space, gun drawn as her police training dictated. The flickering light from the candles guided her towards the altar area, where she heard muffled sounds. What she saw next defied all her expectations. Dexter stood over a plastic-wrapped Travis Marshall, ritualistic knife in hand, having just delivered the killing stroke. The scene was unmistakably methodical, plastic sheets carefully arranged, tools organized precisely, photos of Marshall's victims displayed. This was not a desperate act of self-defense, but a clearly practiced ritual. Dexter looked up, blood-stained knife still in hand, and saw Debra standing in the doorway. Their eyes locked in a moment of horrified recognition. Debra seeing her brother as a killer for the first time, and Dexter realizing his darkest secret was finally exposed to the person whose opinion mattered most. Debra's training momentarily took over as she instinctively raised her gun, only to lower it in confusion as recognition fought with denial. Dexter, master of deception in all other circumstances, found himself speechless, unable to think of a plausible explanation for the ritualistic scene before them. As Debra's eyes darted around the kill room, taking in the plastic sheets and the methodical arrangements that spoke of experience rather than impulse, decades of small inconsistencies and unexplained absences suddenly crystallized into a horrifying new understanding of the brother she thought she knew. The immediate consequences of Debra's discovery sent shockwaves through both their lives. In minutes following the revelation, Dexter attempted to explain that he had snapped and killed Travis Marshall in a moment of temporary insanity, but the obvious preparation of the kill room undermined this improvised excuse. In shock and denial, Debra helped Dexter set fire to the church to cover up the crime, her first act as an accomplice to murder, a line she had never imagined crossing as a police officer. The following days brought intense confrontations as Debra pieced together more of Dexter's double life, eventually discovering his blood slide collection and forcing him to admit the full truth, that he was the Bay Harbor Butcher, responsible for dozens of murders, and that their father had known about his urges and trained him to kill according to a code.
I was this close to arresting you this morning.
This revelation devastated Debra, shattering not only her image of her brother, but also of their father, whom she had idolized. Physically, Debra experienced symptoms of trauma, sleeplessness, anxiety attacks, increased drinking, and vomiting upon fully realizing what Dexter was. The impact of Debra's discovery fundamentally altered both siblings' lives and ultimately contributed to her tragic death. Over time, Debra reluctantly became complicit in covering up Dexter's activities, crossing ethical lines she never would have considered before. The most profound moral compromise came when she chose to shoot and kill Captain Maria LaGuerta to prevent her from arresting Dexter, an act that broke something essential in Debra's sense of self. This decision haunted her, leading to a period of self-destruction where she left the police force, worked as a private investigator, abused drugs and alcohol, and engaged in self-destructive behavior. Though she eventually returned to Miami Metro, the psychological damage never fully healed. Hannah McKay first entered Dexter Morgan's life during Season 7 as Miami Metro investigated a series of old murders connected to Wayne Randall, Hannah's former boyfriend, when she was 15 years old. After spending 6 years in juvenile detention for her role as an accomplice in Randall's killing spree, Hannah had built a new life as a respected horticulturist who specialized in growing exotic plants and flowers. When Wayne Randall confessed to additional murders before committing suicide, Hannah was brought in to help locate the remaining bodies, and Dexter was assigned to collect blood samples at excavation sites. Their initial interactions were professional, but charged with mutual interest, as each sensed something unusual about the other. What Dexter didn't initially realize was that Hannah had been more than just Randall's innocent girlfriend. She had actively participated in at least one of the killings. Similarly, Hannah had no idea that the mild-mannered blood spatter analyst who flirted with her at crime scenes was actually the notorious Bay Harbor Butcher. Both Dexter and Hannah had become experts at hiding their true natures, creating an intriguing dynamic as they circled each other, each suspecting the other harbored secrets, but neither yet aware of how similar their dark impulses truly were. After investigating Hannah's background, Dexter found evidence suggesting that she had poisoned Beverly Gray, the owner of the nursery where Hannah worked. This confirmed his suspicion that Hannah was responsible for more deaths than just those committed with Wayne Randall. Rather than reporting his findings to the police, Dexter added Hannah to his list of potential victims, planning to satisfy his dark passenger by killing her according to his code. Meanwhile, Hannah detected something dangerous beneath Dexter's carefully constructed facade during their interactions, particularly when he questioned her about Beverly Gray's death with an insight that went beyond normal police work. The critical moment came when Dexter invited Hannah on a date, ostensibly to pursue their mutual attraction, but actually to lure her to a location where he could abduct her. The date ended with Dexter injecting Hannah with his signature M99, the first step in his kill ritual. For Hannah, the evening that had seemed to promise romance suddenly descended into darkness as she lost consciousness in the arms of a man she had just begun to trust, unaware that she was about to learn his darkest secret in the most intimate and terrifying way possible. Hannah awoke strapped to Dexter's table. In this vulnerable position, held immobile by plastic wrap, Hannah came face to face with the real Dexter Morgan. Not the awkward forensic specialist, but a practiced predator who had killed dozens of people. What made this revelation unique was Hannah's response. Rather than begging for her life or expressing horror, she displayed a calm curiosity, asking why he was doing this and what it meant. She recognized in Dexter something similar to herself, someone who killed not out of blind rage, but with purpose and precision. The climactic moment came when, instead of plunging his knife into Hannah's heart, Dexter cut through the plastic restraining her. As Hannah sat up on the kill table, still surrounded by evidence of what Dexter was and what he had planned to do to her, the dynamic between them transformed. She stared into his eyes, and then the two shared a kiss, and both stripped off to have sex. This sealed an understanding that transcended normal human connections, two predators recognizing and accepting each other in a way neither had experienced before. In that moment, Hannah gained not just knowledge of Dexter's secret life, but an intimate understanding of the darkness that drove him, a darkness she shared in her own way. The hours and days following Hannah's discovery of Dexter's nature brought a swift and radical reshaping of their relationship. Unlike others who learned Dexter's secret and reacted with horror, fear, or desire to fix him, Hannah accepted Dexter exactly as he was. Their first night together, after he had spared her life, established a passionate physical connection that matched their psychological understanding. For Dexter, Hannah represented something he had never experienced: complete acceptance of his true self without judgments or attempts to change him. This was particularly significant following his sister Debra's recent discovery of his secret and her ongoing struggle to reconcile the brother she loved with the killer he was. The immediate effect of their shared secrets was to create an intense intimacy and codependency, as each now held power to destroy the other, but chose instead to protect and understand. Their relationship evolved through cycles of trust and betrayal, with Hannah's knowledge of Dexter's nature serving as both the foundation of their connection and a source of danger. When Debra arrested Hannah for the murder of Sal Price, Hannah's knowledge of Dexter's killing became a point of leverage that could have exposed him to the police. Instead, she maintained his secret, even after being arrested, demonstrating a loyalty that transcended self-preservation.
If you're worried I'm gonna tell people what you are, then don't worry. Secret is safe with me.
After escaping custody, Hannah eventually returned to Dexter's life, still carrying his secret and accepting him, despite the complications it created. Their reunion coincided with Dexter's growing desire to leave his life as a serial killer behind, partly inspired by Hannah's ability to control her own dark urges. Their relationship demonstrated that genuine acceptance was possible for Dexter, even with full knowledge of his darkest nature. Unlike his relationships with Rita, based on deception, Lumen with temporary darkness, or Debra with reluctant acceptance, Hannah's understanding of what Dexter was never wavered, offering a glimpse of what might have been possible if circumstances had been different. In the end, Hannah McKay remained one of the only romantic partners in Dexter's life who truly knew him, accepted him, and survived the knowledge of his dark passenger without being destroyed by it. Isaak Sirko, the sophisticated and lethal Koshka brother leader, pursued Dexter Morgan for killing his lover Victor Baskov, unaware of Dexter's true nature as a serial killer, but recognizing him a kindred spirit capable of taking life with calculated precision. Isaak never discovered that Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher, but he knew that Dexter was a killer. Following the disappearance of his lover Victor Bashkov, Isaak Sirko arrived in Miami seeking vengeance against whoever was responsible. Isaak, a refined Ukrainian mobster known for his intelligence, sophistication, and unwavering loyalty, quickly determined that Dexter had killed Victor and dumped his body in the ocean. Unlike many of Dexter's adversaries, Isaak possessed similar qualities to Dexter himself: methodical planning, emotional control, and lethal efficiency masked behind a veneer of normalcy.
My curtains are open. With Harrison gone, Jamie's not around. Someone has been in my apartment.
Isaac's vengeance quest began with a failed attempt to ambush Dexter at a Colombian bar, resulting in Isaak killing 3 gang members but missing his target. Dexter, recognizing Isaak as a dangerous opponent, attempted to end their conflict by ambushing Isaak at Victor's apartment, only to be outmaneuvered. Their deadly game continued as each man tried to eliminate the other, with Dexter eventually succeeding in having Isaak arrested for the Colombian bar murders, though this proved only a temporary solution when evidence mysteriously disappeared. The dynamic between Isaak and Dexter shifted dramatically after Isaac's release from prison. When members of his own organization turned against him, Isaak found himself in the unlikely position of needing Dexter's help. In a pivotal moment at the bar, Isaak revealed the true nature of his relationship with Victor and questioned Dexter about his own capacity for love. This conversation marked a turning point, as both men recognized similarities in each other despite their adversarial positions. Their temporary alliance formed when Isaak kidnapped Hannah McKay, forcing Dexter to help him kill rival mobsters who were hunting him. As they worked together, a strange respect developed between them, with Isaak noting that under different circumstances, they may have been friends. Their reluctant partnership ended abruptly when George Novikov, Isaac's former associate, fatally shot Isaak during their confrontation with the rivals. In his final moments, Isaak requested that Dexter take him to the same spot he had dumped Victor's body. As Isaak lay dying on Dexter's boat, he delivered poignant reflections on love and connection that resonated deeply with Dexter. Isaak told Dexter not to deny himself the capacity for love that he clearly possessed, despite the darkness within him. Dexter, honoring Isaac's final wish, committed his body to the ocean depths in the same location where Victor rested, reuniting the lovers in death. Though their interaction was brief, Isaak left a lasting impact on Dexter's emotional development. His observations about Dexter's capacity for love challenged Dexter's perception of himself as emotionally detached. The parallels between them, both killers who maintained strict codes and found unexpected emotional connections, forced Dexter to confront his own humanity. Isaac's relationship with Victor and his unwavering loyalty even after death provided Dexter with a model of devotion that influenced his subsequent relationship with Hannah. Unlike many of Dexter's enemies, who either discovered his secret or remained oblivious victims, Isaak achieved a rare position, that of a worthy adversary who evolved into something approaching a friend. Though Isaak never learned that Dexter was a vigilante serial killer, he recognized in Dexter a similar darkness and precision that created a unique understanding between them, making their brief alliance one of the most compelling relationships in Dexter's journey. I thought that Isaak was one of the most underrated villains in the show. Subscribe if you agree. Captain Maria LaGuerta, driven by justice and loyalty to James Doakes, methodically uncovered Dexter Morgan's true identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher during Season 7. Her relationship with Dexter Morgan was complex from the beginning. Initially flirtatious, then professionally respectful, occasionally antagonistic, but never truly close. LaGuerta had been deeply loyal to Sergeant James Doakes, her former partner and close friend, who was posthumously framed as the Bay Harbor Butcher after his suspicious death. While most of the department accepted the official story that Doakes was the serial killer who had been dismembering criminals and disposing of their bodies in the ocean, LaGuerta never fully believed her friend capable of such actions. The investigation that led LaGuerta to discover Dexter's secret began with a seemingly unrelated blood slide found at a crime scene involving the death of Travis Marshall, the Doomsday Killer. This small piece of evidence reminded her of the Bay Harbor Butcher case, as blood slides had been Doakes' supposed trophies. The tension escalated when LaGuerta reopened the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation, first privately and then officially, despite resistance from her colleagues who considered the case closed. Her critical breakthrough came when she tracked down the cabin where Doakes had died and discovered that the owner of the cabin was linked to Dexter's past, specifically to his mother's murder case. This connection was too specific to be coincidental, leading LaGuerta to directly investigate Dexter's movements around the time of various Bay Harbor Butcher victims' disappearances. The decisive moment in her investigation occurred when she set a trap for the real Butcher by releasing a convicted killer named Hector Estrada, one of the men responsible for the murder of Dexter's mother. LaGuerta suspected that if Dexter was indeed the Butcher, he would not be able to resist killing Estrada, especially given the personal connection to his mother's death. Her plan nearly worked. Dexter did attempt to kill Estrada, only for the man to escape when Dexter realized the trap.
That fucking cop bitch, the one who got me out. Oh yeah, they said that there was a big push for my release from the captain of Miami Metro.
LaGuerta.
She fucking set me up.
This confirmed LaGuerta's suspicions beyond reasonable doubt, setting the stage for her final confrontation with the man she now knew to be the real Bay Harbor Butcher. After her initial attempt with Estrada failed, she continued gathering evidence, including phone records that placed Dexter at locations connected to Butcher victims and security footage that showed him at the marina during suspicious hours. Armed with this evidence, LaGuerta obtained arrest warrants for Dexter Morgan. However, Dexter anticipated her moves and devised a counter-strategy to frame LaGuerta for framing him, making it appear that she was planting evidence out of an obsession with clearing Doakes' name. Despite this setback, LaGuerta remained convinced of Dexter's guilt and continued pursuing him, eventually tracking him to the shipping container where he had taken Hector Estrada for his second attempt at killing him. When LaGuerta arrived at the scene, she discovered much more than she had bargained for. Not only Dexter in his kill attire with Estrada's body, but also Debra Morgan, who had followed them both. As LaGuerta pleased, the full horror of Dexter's influence became clear when he manipulated Debra into making an impossible choice between her brother and her moral code. In the most shocking moment of revelation, LaGuerta witnessed not only the confirmation that Dexter was indeed the Bay Harbor Butcher, but also the corruption of Debra Morgan, who ultimately chose to shoot LaGuerta to protect her brother. In her final moments, LaGuerta experienced the grim satisfaction of having her suspicions confirmed, coupled with the devastating realization that the corruption surrounding Dexter ran deeper than she imagined. extending to her own police department through Debra. The direct consequences of LaGuerta's discovery and subsequent murder created immediate ripples throughout Miami Metro and the Morgan family. Dexter and Debra staged LaGuerta's death to make it look like she and Estrada had killed each other in a final confrontation, leaving both bodies at the scene. Though he escaped exposure, her ability to connect the dots through meticulous police work demonstrated that his crimes could be discovered through conventional investigation, not just by those he allowed close to him. This realization influenced his increased caution in later kills and contributed to his eventual decision to fake his death and leave Miami behind. Dr. Evelyn Vogel, a neuropsychiatrist specializing in psychopaths, not only knew Dexter Morgan was a serial killer, but had helped create him by working with Harry Morgan to develop the code, making her the only person to know Dexter's true nature before he did himself. Dr. Evelyn Vogel entered Dexter's life during Season 8 as a renowned neuropsychiatrist who specialized in studying psychopaths and their brain functions. She arrived at Miami Metro to assist with investigation of the brain surgeon. What initially appeared to be a standard consulting relationship quickly revealed itself as something far more personal and profound. Unlike others who discovered Dexter's secret throughout the series, Dr. Vogel approached Dexter with full knowledge of his true nature from their first private conversation. She had worked with Dexter's adoptive father, Harry Morgan, years earlier when Harry sought to help handling young Dexter's growing homicidal urges. Together, they had developed the Code of Harry. This unique position made Dr. Vogel more than just another person who knew Dexter's secret. She was partially responsible for creating the methodical killer he became.
Trust me when I say that there's a place in this world for your son. I don't know what it is or what form it'll take, but we're gonna find it. Together.
She viewed Dexter as both a success story and something of a surrogate son, taking pride in how her guidance had channeled his natural homicidal tendencies into what she considered a more constructive direction. For Dexter, Vogel's appearance represented both a threat and an opportunity, someone who understood him at his core, but whose motives remained unclear. The tension between Dexter and Dr. Vogel developed through a series of revelations that gradually shifted their power dynamic. Initially suspicious of her motives, Dexter maintained a cautious distance while trying to understand why she had suddenly appeared in his life. The critical turning point came when Vogel revealed that she was being threatened by the brain surgeon, receiving jarring packages containing pieces of former patients' brains. This vulnerability transformed their relationship as Dexter moved from suspecting Vogel might expose him to actively protecting her by hunting the brain surgeon. As they worked together, tracking the brain surgeon, Vogel's clinical observations of Dexter in action created an unprecedented dynamic. Someone observing his killing process, not as a victim, accomplice, or reluctant witness, but as a scientific observer, evaluating her creation. The full extent of Vogel's knowledge and his implications became clear through their collaborative hunt for the brain surgeon. For perhaps the first time, he saw himself through the eyes of someone who had known what he was before he did himself. A psychopath whose impulses had been channeled rather than cured. This revelation was both validating and disturbing. While Vogel accepted him without judgment, her acceptance came with the clinical assertion that he was fundamentally different from normal humans, and capable of the emotional connections he had begun to believe possible. The direct consequences of Vogel's knowledge created a complex relationship unlike any Dexter had experienced before. Vogel's acceptance of his true nature provided Dexter with a rare space where he could speak openly about his kills and urges without fear of judgment or rejection. But Vogel's firm belief that Dexter was just a psychopath caused problems as it clashed with how he was starting to see himself and his growing wish to connect emotionally with others. This tension came to a head when Dexter discovered that the brain surgeon was actually Daniel Vogel, Evelyn's supposedly dead son who had been institutionalized for killing his brother. Evelyn's decision to try reconnecting with Daniel rather than allowing Dexter to kill him revealed the limits of her acceptance of the code, rules she had helped create but was willing to bend for her biological son. This hypocrisy created a rift between them, with Dexter feeling betrayed that Vogel would apply different standards to her own son than she had helped apply to him. The situation grew more complicated when Daniel, now living under the name Oliver Saxon, killed a man in Dexter's apartment to frame him, demonstrating that he knew Dexter's secret as well through his mother's files. This escalation forced both Dexter and Vogel to reconsider their positions, Vogel finally accepting that her biological son was beyond saving, and Dexter recognizing the danger Vogel's knowledge posed if it fell into the wrong hands. This tension influenced Dexter's decision-making as he planned to leave Miami with Hannah and Harrison, questioning whether he could truly live a normal life or if Vogel was right about his inherent limitations. The most dramatic consequence came when Oliver Saxon murdered Dr. Vogel by slitting her throat in front of Dexter, eliminating the woman who had known his secret longer than anyone else. Her death removing the living link to the origins of his code and the medical justification for his condition. With Vogel gone, Dexter lost his spiritual parent and the architect of his killing methodology, creating a void in his understanding of himself. This loss, combined with Saxon's subsequent shooting of Debra, catalyzed Dexter's final decision to kill Saxon in police custody, to send Hannah and Harrison away without him, and ultimately fake his own death and exile himself into isolation. Her brief presence in his life had forced Dexter to confront the origins of his dark passenger and question whether he was capable of change, themes that would dominate his final choices as he disappeared in the self-imposed exile, leaving behind the life that Harry and Vogel helped shape. Zach Hamilton, a troubled young man with homicidal urges, discovered Dexter Morgan was a serial killer when Dexter caught him attempting to commit murder, leading to a unique mentor-student relationship that briefly gave Dexter the opportunity to pass on Harry's code before Zach's untimely death. Zach Hamilton was the 19-year-old son of Ed Hamilton, a wealthy and influential man in Miami's social circles. Despite his privileged upbringing, Zach harbored violent impulses and a fascination with blood that mirrored Dexter's own dark passenger. Their paths crossed during Season 8 when Dexter investigated Zach as a suspect in the murder of Norma Rivera, his father's mistress. While following Zach and collecting evidence against him, Dexter recognized something familiar in the young man's behavior, the same urges that shaped his own life. This connection deepened when Dr. Evelyn Vogel suggested that Zach might benefit from similar guidance rather than being killed. Vogel saw Zach as just another psychopath who could potentially be channeled towards killing only those who deserved it, just as she had helped to do with Dexter years earlier. The tension leading to Zach's discovery of Dexter's secret was built through a series of cat-and-mouse encounters as Dexter stalked him while contemplating whether to kill him or teach him. After confirming that Zach has indeed murdered Norma Rivera, Dexter prepared a kill room and abducted him, following his usual ritual. However, during their confrontation, something unexpected happened. Instead of showing fear, Zach displayed fascination and a strange kind of recognition. As Dexter questioned him about the murder, Zach revealed his own dark urges and the relief he felt after killing, descriptions that echoed Dexter's own experiences. This resonance, combined with Dr. Vogel's encouragement to become a mentor, led Dexter to make the unprecedented decision to cut Zach free rather than kill him. With Zach's homicidal urges now undeniable, and his potential as either victim or student hanging in the balance, Dexter faced a choice that would lead to the most deliberate revelation of his secret to date. The full revelation of Dexter's true nature to Zach unfolded in an intense conversation after Dexter prevented him from killing Sofia Fuentes. Rather than the typical horror or disbelief that accompanied others learning his secret, Zach's reactions was one of fascination and relief. "You're like me," Zach said, recognizing a kindred spirit rather than a monster. Dexter confirmed this observation by explaining aspects of his methodology, how he bedded targets, prepared kill rooms, and disposed of bodies. This wasn't a reluctant confession, but a deliberate teaching moment, the beginning of an apprenticeship. For the first time, Dexter found himself in the position Harry had been in decades earlier, facing a young person with homicidal tendencies and trying to channel those urges rather than stop them entirely. As Zach absorbed this knowledge, his excitement was palpable, seeing in Dexter not just a killer, but a potential solution to the violent impulses that had plagued him. The dynamic between them shifted from hunter and prey to teacher and student, with Zach eager to learn the discipline and rules that allowed Dexter to survive undetected for so long. The immediate consequences of Zach knowing Dexter's secret created a complex new relationship that briefly gave Dexter a taste of legacy. However, this potential relationship was cut tragically short when Zach was murdered by the brain surgeon, Oliver Saxon, who left Zach's body in Dexter's apartment with part of his brain removed. The sudden loss prevented the full development of their mentor-student relationship and eliminated one of the few people who knew and accepted Dexter's true nature. The broader impact of Zach knowing Dexter's secret was cut short by his murder, but the brief mentorship still had lasting effects on Dexter's final journey. The experience of teaching the code gave Dexter a glimpse of a different kind of legacy than passing on normal family traditions to his son Harrison. For a short time, Dexter saw the possibility of his methods and knowledge continuing through Zach, a form of immortality for his dark passenger. Zach's death also reinforced the danger that came with connection. Anyone who knew Dexter's secret became vulnerable themselves, a lesson that would influence his final decision to separate himself from his loved ones. When Saxon killed Zach, he not only murdered a promising student, but also eliminated Dexter's only attempt to create a successor. This leads it up to the final person in the original show who knew Dexter's secret, and it's someone who we've brought up a couple of times. It's of course Oliver Saxon, the brain surgeon. Oliver Saxon, born Daniel Vogel, was one of the most dangerous individuals to learn about Dexter's secret. As the son of Dr. Evelyn Vogel, Saxon had unique access to information about Dexter's true nature. Saxon had a troubled history that paralleled Dexter's in disturbing ways. As a child, he had killed his younger brother Richard by drowning him in a pool, leaving his parents to have him committed to a mental institution. After faking his death in a fire, he adopted various identities before settling as Oliver Saxon in Miami, where he began killing former patients of his mother and removing portions of their brains as trophies. His reappearance in Mother's life coincided with Dexter's own growing relationship with Dr. Vogel, creating a triangle of psychopaths with different motivations and methodologies. The tension leading to Saxon fully confirming Dexter's secret identity built through a series of calculated moves and counter-moves. Saxon initially stalked his mother from afar, sending her brain pieces from her former patients as messages. As Dexter worked with Dr. Vogel to identify the brain surgeon, Saxon observed their unusually close relationship. The critical turning point came when Saxon gained access to his mother's patients' files, which included detailed notes on Dexter Morgan. Notes that described not just his psychological profile, but his activities as a vigilante killer who followed the code she had helped develop with Harry Morgan. This information gave Saxon unprecedented insight into Dexter's methodology and motivations. Rather than immediately confronting Dexter, Saxon used this knowledge to stay one step ahead. This situation escalated when Dr. Vogel discovered Saxon's true identity and attempted to reconnect with her son, temporarily keeping his presence secret from Dexter. This created a dangerous triangle as Saxon manipulated his mother's affections while Dexter grew suspicious of her sudden secretiveness. The deadly intersection of Saxon's knowledge about Dexter culminated in Dr. Evelyn Vogel's murder, a pivotal moment that revealed how dangerous Saxon's understanding of Dexter's secret truly was. As she collapsed, bleeding out on her kitchen floor, Dexter rushed in, only to find her dying in his arms. In this moment, Saxon demonstrated not just his knowledge of Dexter's true nature as a serial killer, but his understanding of the bond between Dexter and Vogel, knowledge that made him uniquely dangerous. By killing Vogel, Saxon wasn't just eliminating his mother, he was striking directly at the foundation of Dexter's code and identity while simultaneously removing the woman who connected them, effectively declaring war on Dexter with full knowledge of what kind of adversary he was facing. Recognizing the danger Saxon posed with his knowledge, Dexter initially planned a traditional kill according to his ritual. However, as Dexter prepared to leave Miami with Hannah McKay and his son Harrison, he made the strategic decision to expose Saxon to law enforcement instead of killing him personally. This marked a significant departure from his usual approach, influenced by his desire to start a new life and potentially leave his dark passenger behind. Saxon countered by using his knowledge of Dexter's attachments, targeting Debra Morgan and shooting her in the abdomen when she attempted to arrest him. This attack on Dexter's sister demonstrated how Saxon's understanding of Dexter's personal connections made him more dangerous than a typical adversary. As Debra's conditions deteriorated in the hospital due to complications from her wound, Dexter faced the consequences of his decision not to kill Saxon when he had the chance. This led to their final confrontation in a police interview room, where Dexter used a pen to stab Saxon in the neck, an execution witnessed and subsequently covered up by Angel Batista and Joey Quinn, who believed that Dexter had acted in self-defense. Saxon's attack on Debra, facilitated by his understanding of her importance to Dexter, led to her stroke and vegetative state, a tragedy that became the catalyst for Dexter's decision to abandon his plans for a new life with Hannah and Harrison. More fundamentally, the confrontation with Saxon, a psychopath who, like Dexter, had been shaped by childhood trauma but lacked any moral code, served as a dark mirror that forced Dexter to reconsider his own nature and the danger he posed to those he loved. Unlike previous adversaries who had discovered his secret, Saxon represented not just a threat to Dexter's freedom, but to his evolving understanding of himself. By the time Saxon died, with Dexter's pen in his neck, the damage was done. Debra was dying, Dexter's plan for a normal life was shattered, and his journey towards self-imposed exile was set in motion. In this way, Oliver Saxon became perhaps the most consequential person to discover and exploit Dexter's secret, his knowledge becoming the instrument that ultimately separated Dexter from everything he had come to value. Now onto Dexter Newblood. Harrison Morgan, Dexter's son, discovered his father's true identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher after tracking him down in Iron Lake, New York, a revelation that fueled Harrison's lifelong quest to understand his abandonment while simultaneously confirming the dark urges he himself had been battling. Harrison Morgan grew up believing that his father had died in a tragic boating accident, raised by Hannah McKay until her death from cancer when he was 12. After finding a letter that Dexter had written to Hannah explaining his disappearance, Harrison began a years-long search that led him to Iron Lake, where Dexter was living underneath the alias Jim Lindsay. Their reunion was initially awkward, with Dexter reluctant to embrace his son for fear of corrupting him with his dark passenger. Meanwhile, Iron Lake faced a crisis as there was a killer who targeted young runaways, eventually revealed to be Kurt Caldwell, who had operated for years undetected. Harrison brought his own darkness to the situation, Memories of witnessing his mother Rita's murder in a pool of blood as an infant had created traumatic flashbacks and violent urges that paralleled his father's. Unlike other characters who discovered Dexter's secret, Harrison held a unique position as both Dexter's biological son and someone who potentially shared his homicidal tendencies, making his discovery more personally significant than any previous revelation in the series. The tension leading to Harrison's discovery was built through a series of clues and growing suspicions about his father's true nature. Shortly after arriving in Iron Lake, Harrison noticed peculiar behaviors in Dexter, his isolated cabin in the woods, his rigid routines, and moments of uncharacteristic violence, such as when Dexter forcibly subdued a drug dealer who had supplied Harrison's friend with dangerous narcotics. The critical turning point came when Harrison saved his classmates from a potential school shooting, showing reflexes and awareness of violence that couldn't be explained by normal teenage development. During a subsequent conversation, Harrison confronted Dexter about his memories, not just of finding his mother dead, but of seeing a man in the shadows he now realized was his father. This revelation forced Dexter to acknowledge that Harrison might remember more than he initially believed. The situation reached its breaking point when Kurt Caldwell attempted to murder Harrison, only for Dexter to intervene and save him. In the aftermath, Harrison observed how methodically his father subdued Kurt, noting skills that seemed too practical for someone who claimed to be a simple shopkeeper. These observations, combined with Harrison's research into the Bay Harbor butcher case and his own dark urges, created a perfect storm of suspicion that led him directly to confront his father about the truth he had begun to suspect. Backed by growing evidence and his own intuition, Harrison confronted his father directly. "I know what you are." When Dexter attempted to deflect, Harrison pressed harder, describing his dark urges and violent thoughts, what he called his shadow, in terms that mirrored Dexter's own internal monologues about his dark passenger. This unexpected parallel forced Dexter to recognize something of himself in his son. In a moment of connection unlike any in the series, Dexter finally admitted the truth, confirming that he was indeed a serial killer who followed a code taught to him by his adoptive father Harry. As Harrison absorbed this information, his reaction mixed horror, understanding, and a disturbing sense of relief at having his suspicions confirmed. The moment deepened when Dexter decided to introduce Harrison to his ritual by taking him to the kill room he had prepared for Kurt Caldwell. There, Harrison witnessed firsthand the meticulous nature of his father's process. When Dexter performed the kill, Harrison participated, not just as an observer, but as an assistant, helping his father dismember Kurt's body afterward. This shared experience created a twisting bonding moment as Harrison finally understood not just the fact of his father's killings, but the psychological release it provided, the temporary silencing of the dark urges that Harrison himself had felt throughout his life. The direct consequences of Harrison learning his father's secret created an initially closer but ultimately volatile relationship. In the days following Kurt's death, Dexter attempted to mentor Harrison in The Code, explaining how Harry had channeled his homicidal urges towards those who deserved death. Harrison seemed receptive at first, relieved to find an explanation for his own dark thoughts and a potential path to managing them. However, cracks quickly appeared in their newfound bond as Harrison began questioning the morality of Dexter's actions. While Dexter insisted his killings served justice, Harrison increasingly focused on the collateral damage, particularly how Dexter's lifestyle had led to the death of Harrison's mother, Rita, Aunt Debra, and ultimately his abandonment by the father he needed. This moral questioning came to a head when Dexter impulsively killed Sergeant Logan, an innocent man who stood between Dexter and his freedom after Police Chief Angela Bishop discovered evidence of his crimes. When Harrison learned about Logan's murder, he realized that Dexter had broken his own code by killing an innocent. This violation created an immediate and irreparable rift between them, with Harrison rejecting the idea that his dark urges needed to be satisfied through murder. Instead of embracing his father methodology, Harrison turned against it, recognizing that Dexter's approach to handling his darkness had created a trail of destruction that hurt innocent people, including those that Dexter claimed to love. The broader impact of Harrison discovering his father's secret culminated in the series' final moments as Harrison confronted Dexter about killing Logan. Realizing the true cost of his father's lifestyle, Harrison rejected the path that Dexter offered to him. In their final conversation, Harrison aimed a rifle at his father, creating a moment of reckoning for both of them. Dexter, seeing that Harrison had developed a stronger moral compass than his own, encouraged his son to shoot him, effectively choosing to end the cycle of violence rather than corrupt his son further. Harrison's decision to pull the trigger marked a definitive break from his father's legacy, even as the act itself, killing Dexter, paradoxically reflected the violence in his blood. As Harrison drove away from Iron Lake, he carried with him the complete knowledge of who his father was, both the serial killer who had terrorized Miami and the broken man who had ultimately chosen his son's redemption over his own survival. This knowledge represented both a burden and a liberation. Harrison now understood the darkness in his own nature, but it rejected his father's way of managing it. In choosing to walk a different path, Harrison broke the cycle that had begun with his grandfather Harry teaching Dexter the code. Angela Bishop, Iron Lake's first female police chief and Dexter's girlfriend, uncovered his true identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher through determined detective work, transforming their romantic relationship into a deadly game of cat and mouse that ultimately led to Dexter's demise. Angela Bishop served as the police chief of Iron Lake, New York. She was a respected law enforcement officer dedicated to solving the mysterious disappearances of several young women in her town, unaware that her boyfriend Jim was actually one of the most prolific serial killers in Florida's history. The relationship had progressed to a point where Angela trusted Dexter completely, even introducing her to her teenage daughter Audrey and considering a deeper commitment. The path of Angela discovering Dexter's secret identity unfolded through a series of escalating clues and coincidences that tested her investigative skills. The first hint came when her friend and police podcaster Molly Park mentioned the Bay Harbor Butcher case from Miami, planting a seed of curiosity about this notorious serial killer who had never been caught. Her investigation gained momentum after a drug dealer named Miles was found dead with a distinctive needle mark in his neck, the same method Dexter had used on countless victims. The turning point came when Angela attended a law enforcement conference in New York City and happened to meet Angel Batista, Dexter's former colleague from Miami Metro. During their conversation, Batista mentioned the Trinity Killer case and about how Debra Morgan solved it, yet she passed away along with her brother who had a child named Harrison. This shocking connection prompted Angela to dig deeper, ordering the obituary for Dexter Morgan. Her suspicions intensified when she discovered irregular needle marks on Matt Caldwell's body parts recovered from the burnt-down cabin, marks consistent with the Bay Harbor Butcher. This gruesome discovery occurred just as she was processing the realization that her boyfriend matched the profile of the Bay Harbor Butcher, creating a disturbing parallel between two serial killers operating in her town. The moment of absolute certainty arrived when Angela connected another murder to Dexter, that of drug dealer Jasper Hodge, who was found with the same forensic signature as Miles and the Bay Harbor Butcher victims. She carefully laid a trap by asking Dexter to meet her at the station after hours, pretending it was for a personal conversation, but actually planning to confront him with evidence that she had gathered. As she arranged the crime scene photos, forensic reports, and the Bay Harbor Butcher case files on her desk, Angela prepared for the most difficult interrogation of her career, questioning the man that she had loved about his identity as a monster who had evaded justice for decades. The confrontation between Angela and Dexter unfolded in the quiet police station as she methodically presented her evidence. When Dexter arrived, expecting a personal conversation, he instead found Angela in full police mode, her desk covered with crime scene photos connecting him to multiple murders. Rather than the emotional outbursts one might expect from a betrayed lover, Angela maintained professional composure as she systematically laid out the connections between Jim Lindsay and Dexter Morgan, and between Dexter Morgan and the Bay Harbor Butcher. Faced with mounting evidence, Dexter initially attempted to maintain his cover, but Angela's detailed knowledge, including information from Angel Batista about his sister Debra's death and his supposed death in the hurricane, made denial impossible. Recognizing the severity of his situation, attempted to shift blame to Kurt Caldwell by revealing a cabin full of preserved victims. When Angela investigated and found this gruesome scene, it only reinforced her determination to see justice served for all the killers operating in her jurisdiction. The situation escalated dramatically when Dexter killed Sergeant Logan during an escape attempt, transforming Angela's quest for legal justice into an urgent manhunt. This murder of her friend and colleague eliminated any remaining conflicted feelings she might have had about her former lover, solidifying her resolve to bring him to justice at any cost. The last, but definitely not least person to find out Dexter's secret was Angel Batista. Angel Batista had worked alongside Dexter Morgan for years at Miami Metro Homicide, developing a genuine friendship with the blood spatter analyst he respected both as a colleague and as a friend. In the decades since Dexter's supposed death in Hurricane Laura, Batista had continued his law enforcement career and had been promoted to captain. During this time, he maintained fond memories of his former colleagues, including Dexter and Debra Morgan, unaware that the man he mourned had faked his death and relocated to Iron Lake, New York. Batista had no reason to suspect that his friendly, somewhat awkward former co-worker had been the notorious Bay Harbor Butcher, a case officially closed with the death of Sergeant James Doakes years earlier. The chain of events leading to Batista's potential discovery began at a law enforcement conference in New York, where he encountered Angela Bishop. After their panel discussions, they met at a bar for drinks, where their casual conversation took a significant turn. When Angela mentioned her ongoing investigation into missing women in Iron Lake, Batista drew parallels to cases that he had worked on. The decisive moment came when Angela, having gathered substantial evidence against Dexter, placed him under arrest for the murder of Matt Caldwell and called Batista to inform him not only that Dexter Morgan was alive, but that she believed he was the real Bay Harbor Butcher. When Angela informed him that she had Dexter Morgan in custody and suspected him of being the real Bay Harbor Butcher, Batista's reaction was one of shocked disbelief, followed by grim determination. she emailed him a photo of a recent Dexter taken with Angela, in which this 100% confirmed for Batista that Dexter was still alive. "I'll be there first thing tomorrow," he told her firmly, "with everything." This simple statement carried enormous weight. It represented not just professional cooperation, but the moment when Batista began to seriously consider that his friend had been a serial killer who had deceived him for years. The realization that Dexter had been alive all these years while he and others mourned him was shocking enough, but the suggestion that he might also be the Bay Harbor Butcher forced Batista to question everything he thought he knew about his former friend. In that moment, on the phone, the foundation of trust and friendship that had defined their relationship began to crumble as Batista mentally prepared himself to confront a man who might have been wearing a mask their entire acquaintance. Although, unfortunately, we never got to see Batista confront Dexter about his true identity, which personally I was very disappointed in while watching New Blood, but hopefully we'll see it happen in Resurrection. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on, and I'll see you in the next video about every single person Dexter killed.